Hey everybody, today I've got my second video of positional tips for you guys. I saw you guys enjoyed the last video, so I figured I'd share a couple more ideas that are going to help you in your games. So let's get started. When considering if a position is ripe for tactics, look for overloaded defenders or unprotected enemy pieces. We can see here that the black king is defending both the rook on d7 and the pawn on f7, and white can sacrifice the rook by taking on f7. Now black is going to be forced to take back, and now we can take the rook with a check. King to g6, queen to g7. Now by taking advantage of the king being overloaded, white ends up with one pawn up and drives the enemy king into a very open position where mate is soon to come. Let's take a look at another example. Here, white is clearly winning, even if it's a little bit hard to see. I want to know if you can find the right sequence of moves here. Okay, well I do hope you at least found this brilliant queen take on d7. Now white is going to take advantage of the fact that the rook on d8 is overloaded by defending both the 8th rank and the rook on d7. So, after he recaptures, white is going to deliver this check on e8, and after bishop moves to e4, he's going to take the other rook. Now, you might think, what was so brilliant because we just exchanged one queen for two rooks? Now, if you're thinking about that, I'd encourage you to look closely because black has a piece that is once again overloaded. Can you see it now? The overloaded piece here is the queen, because if black decides to save his bishop, white can take the knight for free. The queen can't take back because rook to f7 is checkmate. The higher rated a player is, the more they prefer tension. To take is a mistake. You don't need to take every single time your opponent proposes a trade. Now remember, an experienced player is not going to offer a trade unless it's going to improve their position. Never take a piece unless it results in an immediate gain. In this position right here, taking the knight is actually going to be a mistake. Even if black is threatening to checkmate and you eliminate that threat by capturing the knight, the problem here is that black can now develop with tempo by recapturing the knight with his bishop. Also, your knight was a very strong piece in that position, while the black bishop is way less active. So a better defense was actually to play knight f3, protecting and attacking the queen at the same time. After the queen moves, you can play bishop to f4, really solidifying your position. Now like I just said, a higher rated player tends to prefer tension, which is why my next tip is to completely overwhelm your opponent with a lot of options. Don't make their game easier by forcing them to do one or two moves unless those two moves benefit you. For example, it's easier to calculate checks and recaptures, etc. Don't do that. Instead, put pressure on your opponent and make them think about 2 or 3 things at once. Sooner or later, they're going to fail to defend everything. Now look at the position in front of you. Instead of resolving the tension here in the center, white plays the move a4, trying to expand on the queen side as well. Now, black has way too many options to think of. Trade in the center, wait and prepare for the trades, address the queenside tension, etc., while white's plan is pretty straightforward. Okay, this one, I don't even really know if it should be called a tip, because it would be a mistake to tweak your gameplay based on your opponent's rating. But usually when I find myself playing against a lower rated player, I don't mind trading queens down a pawn if it improves my position even slightly, because I have plenty of time for them to blunder, especially in the endgame. Now what I'm trying to say is, it's okay to make moves that don't look so ethical if those moves are going to improve your winning chances even just for a little bit. Alright, on to the next one. Always make a plan. I know it sounds simple, but seriously, always make a plan. Don't play hope chess. Moving pieces from here to there, hoping you'll achieve something along the way. Always think about your next 2 or 3 moves. Here, white has a massive lead in development. One of black's worst pieces in this position is definitely his light square bishop, which he plans to trade off via a6. You don't need to make a complicated plan, just simply 2 or 3 moves ahead, having a clear idea of what you want next. Now black's next plan here is to maybe contest the c-file control by bringing one of his rooks on c8, and after that to reroute his knight, maybe c7, b6, depending on what white plays next. This is a really important one. It is completely fine to play a move just to provoke a pawn push, and then retreat right back to the square you came from. Even if it feels bad, pawns can't move backwards, so carefully consider the squares being weakened by every pawn push. We see that instead of playing rook to d8 immediately, we can play rook to b8 to attack the b2 pawn. If white decides to defend it by playing pawn to b3, well, we've just created a weakness on the dark square. Now, by playing rook to d8, we're threatening to play bishop b4 next turn, putting a lot of pressure on the knight. From here, white's best move is just going to be to retreat his bishop, and he's got to be really careful not to fall for a tactic. Now, after bishop to b4, if he makes a random move, let's say bringing the light square bishop back to h3, black is going to take the bishop with a check. White is then forced to take back, and now the knight is free to capture. And he doesn't have this c1 defense because the bishop can capture the other rook, and here black is clearly winning, being one knight up. Okay, so here, white's best move is to trade a pair of rooks and kick the bishop out with a3 and b4. Now, I know you've heard the rule. As soon as you're up material, just trade pieces and head straight into the endgame. That is correct for the most part, but there are some cases when it doesn't exactly apply. Here, black is up one bishop, and white plays bishop to h6, proposing a trade. Now, black, thinking they have to trade pieces to go as fast as possible into the endgame, would immediately accept the trade, allowing white's queen onto a very dangerous square. Black is still at an advantage, and they want to trade yet another set of pieces. By playing knight to e5, he proposes yet another exchange. Now remember, experienced players only trade if that's going to improve their position. And here, white is not forced to take. Instead, white could simply play knight to g5. And that's going to have an unstoppable checkmate the next move. Now in that initial position, black should not have accepted the trade. Instead, he should have continued his development as if nothing happened and just moved the e-pawn. If white takes the bishop, black would capture with the king, and by doing that, he would protect the h6 square. And now, the white queen can't pose any threat. I hope you enjoyed this second video on positional tactics. Always try and analyze your position really carefully, and don't rush and play the first move that comes to mind. We'll see you in the next one.